So this is Vera's song, Jill's song, and Chanterelle's song. My name is Ti-Hua Chang. I'm going to be moderating. We're going to talk for about 20 minutes, and then we're going to ask a couple of questions of the song sisters, and then we're... and we have Mark Minton.
Producer.
Producer Mark Minton.
I blame it on the F-train.
And then we're going to open it up to some questions. Just we'll ask the questions to be short. So I'm going to ask any of the song sisters, the first thing about this is to ask you is, why did you decide to do the film?
Let's see, how do we even...
Start with how it started.
Right, okay.
Mark.
Thank you, Tina. So I knew Mark, and our family knew Mark for about 10 to 12 years now, I guess that's what it is. And through this really stressful period, I was sharing a lot of what was going on with anybody who was a really close friend of mine. And naturally, I was sharing what was going on with Mark. And Mark had, during the beginning of the trial, said to me, do you realize that you are the only bank that has been indicted in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis? And I thought about it, we all thought about it. I think we knew that we were, but when you say it like that, it's a little bit, astounding. And he said, well, I think a documentary should be made of this. And at the time, we all had different thoughts about this. We were really stressed out about preparing for trial. We thought it might really be invasive and actually disruptive. A lot of us felt even shy or uncomfortable in being in front of camera and having concerns about our privacy. But ultimately, we all agreed that this was a very important story that should be told. And even though we didn't know what the outcome would be, we felt that it is important to tell anyway.
Mark, can you tell how you convinced the Sung family to do the film?
Well, part of it was, first of all, can you believe that they were shy? When you see them on camera when they say that they're shy? Yes. So, yes, they were actually. They were very reticent. So I had been producing another documentary called Life Itself about Roger Ebert, and was ready to go into a different project, and I kept talking to Vera from a personal standpoint. We were just talking about what was going on with the family and the bank, and it struck me that this case had not been covered by any major media. That the New York Times covered it for when the indictment came down, and then when the verdict came back. And it was so astounding to me that I felt that we absolutely had to. And the way that I convinced them was through bringing in a director named Steve James. So Steve had worked with me on Life Itself and is a very down-to-earth, someone that gets you to relax when he starts to talk to you and ask you questions about the story that you're going to tell. And I think that's really what convinced you all, ultimately. And I brought Steve in for 3 days. Steve was not sure that this was the right documentary for him. But after he met the Sungs and started to do some more digging, he was full on. I think it was Steve that really convinced you guys. I mean, you tell me what you think. Look at Chanterelle. Do you want me to give the microphone?
Yeah, so I was one of the family members who was quite hesitant to be filmed, and for all the reasons that Vera had stated. But when Steve sat down with me for the first interview, it's interesting sort of feeling in that he was really down to earth. I felt like I had almost known him or something from before, and I just completely opened up and felt comfortable, and in fact wanted to tell him this story that I had been until then only speaking about with family members or very close friends. So I felt like it was almost a cathartic process to have someone there to listen, and I think maybe my family members felt similarly.
Could I ask how the bank is doing now?
So I think we're finally back in the spot and on the path we should be. It's taken a very long time. It's been 2 years, and the 12 months after the trial was very hard, very challenging. The 5-year ordeal had wreaked a pretty bad havoc on our reputation and our business. But I think now we've finally are back to the path we should be on, which is basically serving our mission and making sure that people in our community are getting the credit needs that they need.
Did you find out who your friends were in the community? during the struggle?
Yes, we did actually, and
Were there a lot of them, or did people abandon you, or how did it work?
well, you want to address that?
Well, I mean, I think that one of the things we've talked about before is that there's always friends that you have and supporters, and some of them are people that you expect because you've talked to them a long time and they know you for a while and they are very much with you and for you. And there are also people that you never expect or that you never met. We've met a lot of friends through this process, people that came out that we never met, and they were like, this is crazy. We need to make sure that you guys have full support. As to whether or not the general community, that we were grateful and happy that we had our customers, they stayed with us, and in that sense, they didn't flee. But we also believe that there was a lot of fear in the community when this happened. And that fear caused a certain amount of desire to keep removed from the incident. And this fear is what this film is touching on, is you're talking about a community that is coming, a lot of first-generation immigrants who are coming from a police state, which is one of the journalists mentioned, and they are scared. And when something like this happened, it's unbelievable and even shocking to us. We're second generation when we can speak English perfectly. And you can only imagine how someone who doesn't know this country that well and is concerned about anything, how they would react.
So, since I'm the guy that termed the David and Goliath slingshot of the lawyers, and all three of you are lawyers here, what do you think about the justice system, both in the negative sense of if you're poor and not white, how much justice do you get, but also in the positive sense, hey, the jury, thank goodness, found you not guilty on 80 counts. So, what do you think of the justice system?
I always get the justice system question. So. Probably because I've worked there for 7 plus 2 years after that, so 9 years total. My view of the system, I mean, I think unfortunately justice is how much you can afford, and we were fortunate to have a family of lawyers. In addition, I actually worked in that very same office for 7 years, and combine that with the family upbringing, values, perseverance, integrity, and all of that. I think that's how we were able to, along with resources, reach this result. We've always been extremely grateful for the jury who took this case extremely seriously and did their duty as they were asked to do. But the one thing that is so scary, and which points to the fact that you cannot abuse your discretion when you're in a position of authority, is that the jury, as you saw, was out for 10 days and almost was a hung jury. This almost was a mistrial, and there were so many times along this 5-year journey, which was how long the district attorney took to investigate and prosecute this case and take it to the end. There were so many times along those 5 years that where decisions were made that were the wrong decisions, and this just shows you this case, it should never even have gotten to this point, but it did. And so it's constantly an uphill battle when you abuse your discretion, and unfortunately this is sort of the ball that gets rolling. And for many people out there, they're in worse situations and are on death row for crimes even that they were innocent of. And so we've always had that perspective, and I think that really has helped us to keep things in perspective as we fought through this.
Yeah, I know, Chantrell, you often say you believe in the system still, correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
I do. I mean, because again, I worked in it for so long and always felt sort of dedicated to the public service and working for the government. I am currently not. I sort of took a step back after all of this and in the private sector, but I think that the system works. The challenge is that you need to get the right people behind it. And I have former colleagues from the office, some of whom are here today, who, we worked hard and did the right thing, and it's really unfortunate to see when you have the wrong people and working behind the system.
But we definitely believe we were targeted, and we definitely believe that it was very purposeful on the behalf of the DA's office. And we definitely believe that it helped to do with personal political ambition not much about really the facts or the substance of the case.
So
I have to tell you, well, go you first.
I was just going to be very blunt and say something that I've been thinking about. You mentioned Chase, and I've always thought that if my father was Jamie Dimon and I was Jamie Dimon's son, that this wouldn't have happened.
I mean, it's a classic case of bullyism, seriously. So pick on people who are weak and who are inconsequential compared to like the big banks, and then you can maybe get a win out of this. So
Can I ask one question?
Well, let me answer something here on this question. I'm going, just so you know that I was reporting at the time, and among reporters at the time, the belief was that Cyrus Vance Jr. had lost so many cases that he decided to go after what he thought would be a weak opponent. He was wrong.
So I'm going to build on Ti-Hua's point, which is how many people are running against Cyrus Vance? Cy is running against this year. How many people are running against him? Zero. That's why we think that Chantrell should be running.
I've obviously thought about this too as well. I think there's the legislative process where you have to make your voice known to your political leaders. I also believe that on an everyday, and that can be frustrating, believe me, you know, I've been through this process before, but I also believe that everyone in this room has to hold beyond the political institution, the actual economic or consumer institutions that you are actually purchasing your goods from. I'm talking from grocery stores, from clothes, from electronic goods, from restaurants, even movie theaters. We can make a big difference by ensuring that we patronize and give our money or open our wallets to smaller places that are local places that are trying to develop personal relationships with people and want to interact with you. And it's sometimes very challenging because, you know, it's not as convenient, but we have to take that challenge and we have to understand that on a long-term basis, we will be very sorry if we don't do it. As the institutions, and I'm talking across the board, you hear about the retail space, more and more consolidation, we will not have a choice anymore if we do not take that focus and that discipline to make sure we patronize and give our money and our spending to local and small businesses. So I think that's something we should be doing today, now.
How about further courage and determination? A round of applause for the speaker.
thank you for coming.